Good morning, Dr. Ward here. I'm actually going to give you a tutorial on bag F, and it's also the same for E. The only difference in F and E is going to be the size of that particular bag. Alright, just to get started, your pattern, when you pull it out, it's going to tell you to cut 2 of the main bag. It will possibly have you either cut 1 or 2 of the bottom, and then it'll have you cut 2 of the pockets. That's just the basic pieces. What you need to know is these things need something on the back of them. They can't just go like that. So if you want to do contrast, you can. If you want to just stick with one color, you can. If you're going to stick with one color on your pocket, my advice would be is to cut this pocket on a fold. That way you don't have to sew at the top. It's already together and pieced together. But I want contrast, so I went and cut some black. So what that means is, for this same pattern, I had to repeat it. And then for both of these, my front and my back of my pocket, which is my contrast, I also sewed on interfacing, so it would stabilize the bag. I did that for both sides. So there's my pocket number 1 and pocket number 2. Set that aside. For my bottom, I actually cut 2 pieces because the bottom needs more support, and on my bottom I actually duplicated the pieces and I put interfacing on both pieces. Interfacing comes in a bolt like this. You see I still have scraps. I want you to use any of the scraps that you find and not to waste, because this stuff is very expensive and it will go a long ways if you use it properly. As you can see, I pieced it here, my leftover scraps. This is interfacing. We use this a lot when we're sewing clothing. This is batting. We put this, we're using this in the big bags because they're heavier and they need support. But we typically use batting when we're making quilts, so we're not going to be using batting on these small bags, only the big ones. And even when you're doing the batting, go back and look at bag A and B video. If I didn't tell you in the video, I want you guys to cut one piece and separate it into 2 pieces. Meaning if I have a front and a back of the bag, I'm only going to cut one that size. I'm going to separate it, and it will become 2 different pieces that I'm going to iron onto the back of that bag. So make sure you watch that video. Pardon me. Okay. For my actual sides of my bag, and this is the same way for bag A and B, the sides, because we have a liner we're going to work with, we do not need to put a contrast side in here because it's not needed right now. So cut your 2 pieces out and then iron on your interfacing. Now for my liner, that's going to go inside the bag, so you won't see that liner or you won't see the interfacing or any of the stitches. I've actually cut out 1 piece of everything. Only, when I say 1 piece of everything, I didn't cut the pockets because the pockets will be finished. There's nothing that I need to insert in the pockets. So I've cut a bottom and I've cut 2 sides because these have to be sewn together to finish out the actual lining. So what I'm going to do is I usually use white thread for almost everything that I have, but the minute I change to a black, more black contrasty colors, I'm going to go with black. I'm not going to use red. I'm going to go with black on this. So I'm going to have to stop and rethread my machine, and the first thing I'm going to do is come back and I'm going to sew these pockets. I'm going to show you how to do that. Okay, I'm back. I'm going to do my liner. Here's the bottom. I'm going to take one of my side pieces. I'm going to put it face down on one side. And I'm only going to sew 1/4. Now if you have, if you can't keep these straight, just put a pin in one of the top sections here just to stabilize it. I don't mind pinning, and once I get started I'll take it out. So I've actually put my side face down, and it doesn't matter because this is the same on both sides which side you put it on this case. And then I'm going to sew 1/4 inch all the way across the top here. Your 1/4 inch is about the size of where your needle goes in. So if I drop my foot right here, if you can see it, my foot's resting right here on the edge of this fabric. That's exactly 1/4. And if you look behind you on the guide plate, you'll see it says 1/4. Okay, so I'm going to sew across here 1/4, and I like to just watch that foot, keep it right on the edge. Keep it right on the edge of my pressure foot. I always reline everything up, make sure it's straight, and I pinch. I hold it tight right there while it's going through, so it doesn't slide on me. When I get to a stopping point, I readjust and hold it. Okay. So now that I've got that sewn down, I'm going to open it away from me, and I'm going to turn and do the other top here. I'm still going to put my side face down. Line it up with the top and the edges as much as possible. Now if it doesn't match identical and you're off like 1/8 of an inch, don't worry, because you're going to be sewing a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and it's going to cover those areas that you're afraid that you're not getting. So right now we're just basting, what we call baste stitching. This means we're just pitting pieces together, or just to hold it. And when we actually piece our fabric together, we go to the actual seam allowance. Okay. And as with anything we do in here, and I'm going to pull this open, and you can see I have one continuous piece here that's going to make up my bottom and my sides. Okay. Anytime you sew, I don't care what it is, you need to go and press those seams open. I don't care how small they are. On bags, when you press one way and you flatten that out, you go back and you press the seam straight so that it doesn't buckle up on you. Now, this is a liner. Let me just show you something. With the liner, we have to have a hole here in the middle. Now, what you're going to do in this end, you're going to go ahead and you put a slit in the middle or cut all the way across here and then piece them back together. And because I've only sewn a 1/4 inch, I didn't use a 1/2 inch, I have some room to move with. I really don't want to lose as much as I don't have to, so I just pick a spot and I just go ahead and give it a cut. It's not that big of a deal. You just need to be able to get in when you pull your bag through later. And then we can sew this closed. So I just snip a little section here. See if I can find what I did with it. Try that again. I'll just go through the center. Okay. Just like that. I just make a little slit, no biggie. See? And I still have at least 1.5 inches or 2 on each side that I didn't touch. This is so that whenever I go in to reach for this bag I'm going to construct, I want to be able to pull it through this hole and have my lining go down inside my bag. So this is off, you know, this is not in your instructions, but this will make your bag look more, looks prettier. That's all there is to it. So I'm going to go and I'm going to open these up right here. And I'm going to say something on your big bag. It does, on the instructions, I have you piece it together a 1/2 inch and then iron it. Don't worry about this. When you pull it through, you're just simply going to pinch off and you're going to sew it closed about a 1/4 inch. So it's nothing. We're just using this temporarily. So I'm going to go back. I want to press these open, and then when I say turn inside outwards, when I say inside outwards, every time you sew, you should have the sides, and I don't know if you can see this, it has all the stitching, all the bad, ugly stitching that you're doing, that you've been sewing. You don't ever want to sew this way where you have your beautiful fold where you've sewn. So I'm going to go and press these open. Then I'm going to piece my two sides together, straight down both sides, and then I'm going to close off the bottom of my bag, and I will show you how to do that. Okay, I don't know if you guys can see this on here. I've pressed my seams open, and I know they're really small. Then I flipped it over, and I hard pressed it out to make it super flat, because I want my lining to be nice and flat. There's my little gap that I'm going to pull the bag through later. Alright, so I'm taking my two top sides. That's the ones that are the finished sides. They look really nice. And I'm going to put those two together. And as you can see, here's my seam. Here's all my raw edges. And that's the stuff that you want on the back side. Now I'm going to sew down each side. The only reason I'm doing a 1/4 inch on this is because it's going to go inside my bag, and I want some wiggle room whenever I start to pin the tops of the bags down. If I put a 1/2 inch seam allowance on my lining, it's going to be too tight to fit in that bag. So I do a 1/4 inch all the way around. Okay, so all I'm going to do now is sew down both sides. I'm not going to come around here. You do not want to sew this, not on the bags. The only time you do that is on a pocket, if you have pockets, and that's on bag A and B, because these two are going to become your corners. This is your corner. You don't want to sew those closed. Alright, so I'm going to sew down the sides here, and then I'm going to show you how to do that corner. Then you're just going to set the bag, you're going to set the lining aside and start working on your bag. Make sure you're sewing from top to bottom, meaning that you're on top of this side, that your needle's dropped right here on this side. Not here, but it's dropped right there. And it goes over the material. Make sure when you get down to your flaps that you opened up, that you check the back and the front and make sure those are lying flat when you go over them. If they're not, then pick up your pressure foot and position it back down till it keeps that flat. Okay, I'm going to follow through all the way to the end. And then, of course, my thread just popped out. Hold on. Got to reposition. Everything just popped out, so just bear with me. This happens. Alrighty, back on track. I'm going to clip off my little stragglers. You always want to clip off those little things and make sure you put them in a garbage can. Okay, I'm going to do the other side. Check to make sure my flaps are down. Okay. cutting my stragglers. Alright, now I'm still on the back side of my bag, the ugly side, and I have these corners now. I don't know if you can see these. What you do is you just open those up and spread them apart, like so. You can see it. Then you're gonna line it up with your crease on the other side. So it's gonna look like something like that. You're gonna sew across there 1/4 of an inch. I would advise going over it a couple times so that you can reinforce it. Make sure those flaps stay open when you're sewing. Okay. I'm going to run back through. I'm going to check it and make sure I got everything closed. And here's my 1/4 inch. I'm going to go just above my 1/4 inch and just sew in between my 1/4 inch and my edge, just to reinforce that stitch in that corner, to make that corner a lot more sturdier. Okay, I'm going to do that for both sides. And as you can see, my pocket is taking shape. And it will sit down now, like that. So that's how pockets are done. The corners. So it looks like this, and you're just opening it up and flattening it out. Make sure those flaps are open when you go through and sew. Okay, and I'm going to do 1/2 inch again. I'm sorry, 1/4 inch. I said 1/2, didn't I? And then the 1/4 inch. Trimming my stragglers. And again, I'm going to check the front and back, make sure I closed it properly. And then in between my 1/4 inch and the edge, I'm going to go in between there and do another line, another stitch line, just to reinforce that. Okay, I am right now done with my lining, and I can actually set that aside because I'm not going to use that until I construct the bag and I put it together. So there's my lining right now. Looks really nice. My hole that I'm going to pull the bag through, and this is going to really turn out nice. I'm going to set that aside and start on my bag. So I'm going to start on my pockets next. That's the first thing I'm going to do. Okay. And everything I'm doing when I base stitch it, that means when you're piecing things together. It's not the final constructed part, it's just you're piecing sections together. You use a base stitch, and in this case I'm using a 1/4 inch. I'm sorry, yeah, I'm using a 1/4 inch, 1/4. Okay, on this, you're going to put your contrast side facing up and put your pattern side facing down. And essentially, your two pretty pieces are facing each other. Your contrast should be on the outside. Okay, and I'm going to try to match this up best I can. And then sew a 1/4 inch seam. So there's my 1/4 inch seam all the way down. This is still on the bad side, and then if you turn around, you have two pieces together that look really nice. And the next thing I'm going to do is once I get my other pocket sewn, I will go over to the iron board. I'm going to press this flap open. We have to get that open and nice and smooth. Keep the tip of that iron down, going through this seam as much as possible. Try not to get on your interfacing, as it'll melt it. Once I have that flattened, I turn it over and I flatten this out even more when I'm sewing it. Then once that's completed, I put my pockets like this, and I check to make sure that my crease all the way down is nice and straight. I don't want to see this on that side, nor do I want to see that on that side of the pocket. I want it to be a nice, smooth, separated crease when I press it out, to where it's obvious that one side's my pattern and one side's my contrast. When you get this done and you have any excess hanging over, don't worry about it. Remember, when you piece all this together, you're going to be using like a 1/2 inch seam allowance. That's going to take care of all that, so don't worry about it. And when you put your liner in, it's going to hide all that. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and sew pocket 2, and I'm going to press. Okay, I've got my 2 pockets. They are completed, and I'm ready to put this on the side of the bag. So I press the inside, press the flat across the top, and as you can see, that nice little seam right here. If I turn around, you can't see any red on that side. If I turn around, you can't see any black on that side. So nice and evenly pressed hard right here. Okay? Alright, so now I get my bag. And I can't reiterate this any more than I'm doing right now. I've heard a lot of people say, I don't understand, what you mean put the sides together. If you have 2 pretty sides facing together, think of this. Just always think pretty kissy kissy, always down, okay? That's when you're sewing inside outwards, okay? But on this case, remember now we're doing the bag, so we don't have to do that on this because we are not turning anything inside outwards. So here you're simply just going to lay this down like so. Okay. And we're going to sew from here all the way down to here. We're doing the 1/4 inch seam because remember we're just base stitching the stuff. So, but I want to reiterate something. Even though you're doing a 1/4 inch, and if you can see this pocket, I want you to go back and forth over that pocket on the top side over, top side over. Do that like 2 or 3 times because we want to reinforce that pocket, because if you're going to use this bag, or anybody, you don't want to wear out that seam. So I'm just going to sew from the top of the pocket all the way down to the sides, 1/4 inch. So I'm dropping my needle right on the top of the pocket. I'm going to come over the pocket and hold my reverse button down and go back. That's enough to do 2. So I'm going to go ahead and go forward with basting my pocket to my bag. Notice I cut all these little stragglers as I go. I'm going to do the same for the other side. This time I'm going to start at the bottom because I don't want the bulk of the fabric in here messing or knotting up. Sometimes you can't help it, and in that case you just kind of roll it to get it to fit through here. Going over the top of my pocket, coming back, then back again. So I reversed it. Okay, cutting my stragglers off. Stragglers, whatever. Okay, so I've got the side of the bag and pocket number 1 finished. Don't worry about this just yet because you're going to put that onto your bottom piece. I'll show you that in a minute. So I'm going to do the same for this side. Pocket down, face down. We're just base stitching this right now. Nothing's going together. Reverse, move forward. 1/4 of an inch. In the garbage it goes. Try to put a garbage can between you and your person sitting next to you so you don't have these stragglers stacking up on you. You want to put them in the garbage because they will start sticking to you and you'll drag them on the floor. Voila, more mess. Reverse and turn back across. Right. So now I have both of my sides of my bags and my pockets together. And again, I didn't do anything here because we're going to construct that on the other bag. So I know this is confusing, but for the pockets, because I already have my liner and everything on the other side, I just need to connect it to the front piece. It's almost like making a new front piece, except for have a pocket. That's why you base stitch it. We're not coming in a half, we're only coming in 1/4 of an inch. Alright, now I've got to get my pocket ready to go. I'm sorry, my bottom. Now my bottom, this can also be outwardly stitched because it's going to be hidden. No, you can't do that. Sorry. I'm trying to think here. Takes me a while. Yes, you can. On the pocket, you can stitch down this side and stitch down this side. And you're only doing 1/4 inch. Do not stitch in here and do not stitch these sides together just yet. And I am putting on this, if you want to sew it inside outwards and turn it around, you can do that if you want to. I'm just going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and sew mine inside outwards. It doesn't really matter because it's going to be hidden by the corner of the bag anyways. It's probably it's going to make me have to press it, and this way I don't have to. So if I'm not confusing you already, I'm going to just confuse you some more. Just go ahead and piece these together like this, because you're going to have to sew this down here anyways. So we don't want to have too many seam lines as it is, because we've already got one with the pocket, and we don't want to keep doing it because we have multiple layers. So let's just top stitch it. Same thing when you're 1/4 inch around. I'm just going to do it on both sides, top stitching. Okay, the next step to do is, pardon me, is to get the bag sewn on. So here's my pocket. Remember my opening? Well, that's going to go face down on this end, so end to end, just like this. Face down, end to end. So when I open it up, my pocket's right here. So I'm going to go ahead and close this off. And because I'm actually piecing my bag together, I'm going to go ahead and use the 1/2 inch seam allowance on this. So this is what it looks like on this side. Essentially, I'm just putting the bottom on so that when I open it up and you see the bottom, you can see my pockets right here. And because I've sewn the bottom, I've closed the bottom of that pocket off. All right. Now you may find yourself needing to pin this. So I usually pin in the middle, and I'll pin on one end. And again, this time, 1/2 inch seam allowance. Stop, pull my pin, stick it in my pin cushion. Stop, pull my pin, and put it in my pin cushion. Get into that habit. All right. Make sure you're following through end to end. And of course, with anything else, I'm going to have to go and press this seam open nice and smooth. Okay. So I've got my 1/2, and I will press that out in a minute. So here's one side of my bag. There's the bottom of it. Here's the side. Now I've got to go and do the same for the other side. So here I am, laying my pretties face up, so that I can take my pretties face down so they can meet each other. Make sure that your pocket in. Don't do the top end. Make sure that the bottom of the pocket, here's the pocket, is going along this edge. So you're going to match the two pieces up together. And again, just reinforce it with a couple of pins. It's not necessary to put a whole lot. This is why I was telling you guys earlier, honestly, you don't need notches on this, and you really don't need notches on your zipper because bags are kind of straightforward. They're easily lined up by edges and corners and sides, so not a big deal at all. Okay. So I am going to make sure I pin this down. Looks like my bag's overlapping just a tad. Okay. Half an inch seam allowance. Make sure you're stitching from top to bottom, meaning actually over the edge to over the end. If that makes any sense. 1/2 inch. If you're not sure what that's at, it's between the 1/4 and the 5/8 on your stitch plate. You can see it real easy. The 1/2 is not marked. If you want to mark it, you can. It's directly to the left of the 5/8 marking. Broke again. Alright. Okay, just cut my stragglers off, and then I'm going to go press this out and come back. So there you have it. There's my two pockets, and there's my bottom. Now, as you can see, I have a little bit of a hangover right here where my stitch is. I'm going to go ahead and trim that. It's not going to hurt anything. I'm just going to trim down the side, but I'm not going to cut because I have my based stitching, so it's no biggie. So I just kind of trimmed that up and evened it out. So now I'm going to go press and come back and sew these two sides together.
Can I go with you to the next room?
Okay, now I'm going to sew these two pieces together. I'm going to fold it over. I'm going to go down the side here, down the side here, and then I'm going to close in the bottom area.
I
All right.
watch it every day.
That was Trinity Russell coming live. Alright, now, we're going to close these ends by pulling it together on both sides, and you're going to sew.
Yeah. You're going to sew what?
Y'all really want part of this? Come on, Cletus, come on. Come on, come on.